Hello and welcome back to the Finding Her Sparkle podcast. I am your host, Ami Rankin, and I am going to be talking to you today all about how I am teaching my children emotional intelligence, how I am teaching them about their feelings and their emotions, how I am teaching them how to process those feelings and emotions, be aware of them, what they can do with them, in the aim to be able to help them to grow into adults that are unlike us. We weren't taught about feelings and emotions when we were at school. And this is essentially why I have a job now as an emotional intelligence coach. But I really do believe that we have the ability as parents now to shape this upcoming generation and to be able to give them and teach them the skills that we didn't learn. I'm going to talk you through the process and how I have done this. For context, if you don't know me, I have a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old. My 5-year-old has just been diagnosed with combination type ADHD. And I have had some feedback from his pediatrician and also his teacher to let me know that he has fantastic self-awareness. He has a fantastic sense of self-confidence in the way that he knows how he feels. So his awareness of his feelings, and essentially that is our emotional intelligence, but also his ability to know what he needs in certain situations when he's feeling a certain way is really quite good. So his teacher and his pediatrician say, after speaking with them, they have kind of said, look, this has to be because he's just so familiar with you speaking about feelings and emotions all day, every day with your work. So unfortunately, like the reel and the TikTok I posted last week, the hard work starts with you. And yes, that is another role that we take on as parents is teachers of many things, teachers of life. By teaching your children emotional intelligence, by teaching them to be aware of how they are feeling, you are also going to get the flow and effect of this as well, twofold. One, with them being able to explain to you and talk to you about how they're feeling and why. Number two, with yourself and increasing your own emotional intelligence, because what will happen is your brain realizes this is something that is important to me. This is a topic that I want to focus on and I want to be more intentional with, and it's going to start to focus on it more often. It is going to start to notice when your children are having different emotions, which you probably are already doing anyway, but it's going to start to focus on and be aware of the conversations that you're having around these things. I want to preface this by saying I am in no way a perfect parent. I still have my moments. I still lose my shit. We have a nervous system, and when our nervous system gets too overloaded and we are too overstimulated, we lead into our reactive and emotional responsive behaviors. That happens to everybody. That's exactly what is happening to your children when they are having a tantrum or they're having an argument and it really feels like they're just kind of like stuck on that one thing and they just can't move past that one thing. Their nervous system gets stuck. It's not that they're stuck on the specific topic, so to speak. It's what is actually going on underneath surface level. And again, this is exactly the same for adults. It's kind of like if I was to say to you, so think about for a moment for yourself, some drama, some gossip, a situation, a circumstance that you have been stuck in the he said, she said of it. You might have a partner or somebody that you live with at home that said they were going to take the bins out and they didn't take the bins out and you missed garbage day. That is the perfect example of a story. Yes, that is a situation or a circumstance that happened, but it's not actually the situation or the circumstance. It's not about the bins. It is the feeling underneath that. It's how that thing makes you feel. As an adult, we may be able to recognize and notice you not taking the bins out makes me feel like you don't respect the amount of mental load that I already carry in this household, and you don't respect me enough to be able to take some of that mental load away from me. Now, I'm not saying that's a conversation that Aaron and I have had before. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. You can see how you realize, oh, okay, yes, it was you not taking the bins out that triggered that feeling or that response. But when I actually realize what's underneath that, this is how we can start to have deeper and more meaningful conversations with people in our lives, because it means that we are able to more accurately describe and converse how we're feeling and why we're feeling that way, instead of, hey, you didn't do this again, you didn't do this again, you didn't do this again, and the person that you is on the other end of that conversation is feeling attacked. Anyway, that's going to be my next podcast, which I'm recording tomorrow. So stay tuned. tuned next week for that podcast episode. I wanted to give you an example of the way that that happens in an adult brain and the way that we can also view that happening in our children's brains and bodies. But because they don't have the brain capacity and their brains aren't as advanced as ours as adults, they don't have the ability to understand, connect these things, and figure out what it is that they need. That is our job. That is what I am going to help you to teach them today. Now, I will say I have been teaching Ollie this since, look, like he was probably 2 when I started teaching this. The aim of what we're doing is to be able to recognize within ourselves and also teach others multitudes of different feelings and emotions, ways that we may feel, ways that they may be feeling, to be able to help them to explain how they're feeling, to better understand themselves and to better navigate the world. Now, number one tool that I would actually suggest before you do anything, before you start any type of teaching, go and download, just Google the feelings wheel. There will be hundreds, probably thousands of different options that come up for you. Just go into Google Images, pick one that looks nice to you or that looks good to you, save it to your phone, save it to your desktop, print it out, put it on your fridge. The feelings wheel is going to be your best friend from today forever, right? I was taught the feelings wheel probably 4 or 5 years ago now. And before I knew that and before I had that tool in my toolbox, I was mind blown when I first saw it. Somebody had asked me in a coaching session, how are you feeling? And I could recognize that I didn't necessarily feel good. I thought I was feeling anxious. And then they said, well, why don't you grab the feelings wheel out and have a look and you can get more specific? And I was mind blown. Like, why hasn't anyone shown me this before? This is amazing. And it helps you to go deeper, especially when if you are or your child is really emotionally heightened. You know, we get to that 7 out of 10 or more, logical brain switches off and your emotional brain kicks in. I'm going to talk more about this next week, but there is no logical thinking that is going to come in here. That is why when someone asks you a question, sometimes if you're like at a 10 out of 10 in a really big emotion and someone says to you, hey, how are you feeling? You're like, oh my God, I can't even think. I don't even have the words or the language to explain how I feel, or you explode, right? So the feelings wheel is a tool that it's a physical tool that you can look at. It's a visual aid that you can use to differentiate between different feelings to help you to explain how you feel, but it is also going to help to teach your children. If they can't read, that's okay. Use it as your tool. If you're like, oh, I'm not really too sure what they're feeling. I think they're angry, but maybe there could be something else underneath it. Grab the feelings wheel out and have a look. So first tip is the feelings wheel. Second tip is start to create conversation around it. And this is our start of our awareness. Start with a conversation or a sentence like, I think that you might be feeling whatever. You know, someone's having a tantrum, someone's starting to get really worked up. You have cut the peanut butter sandwich into squares instead of triangles. You haven't put the right butter on, you've missed the cheese on the cheese and Vegemite sandwich. God forbid we have unpeeled the banana and we've cut it the wrong way. You know, whatever it is, someone's starting to melt down. What we want to do is just simply say what we're observing. Hey, it looks like you're feeling really upset and you didn't want me to peel the banana that way. It looks like you're feeling really mad that I cut your sandwich into squares instead of triangles. That looks like it's really hard for you to be processing, or that looks like a really big emotion. So all this is doing is simply observing and saying out loud what you can see. Now, again, this is going to be improving your own emotional intelligence because you're like, this is what anger looks like. This is the difference between anger and frustration, or frustration and disappointment, frustration and sadness. Lots of different feelings your children could be feeling, but also creating that awareness for you as well. Oh yeah, maybe in that instance, I was feeling disappointed, not angry. So angry is actually a blanket feeling, and there's always something under anger. So that's our second step, is we're just creating that conversation around it. Now, like I said, as adults, this is going to be really helpful for us to do as well. It's not things that we were taught at school. So you are actively teaching yourself these things as well with tools like the feelings wheel, with things like being able to have conversations around these things. Instead of what adults love to do is repression. So repression is one of the techniques that we can use to deal with our emotions, and it's essentially not dealing with our emotions and pushing them away. Repression techniques is all of the things that you love to do when you feel stressed, overwhelmed, tired, anxious, whatever the feelings are, your repression techniques are your distraction techniques, your social media, your Netflix, you're scrolling on your phone, you're replying to emails, your need to constantly be busy and switched on, your need to distract yourself from the reality. Maybe you like to have a drink to help you to calm your nerves down. Whatever it is, there is multiple different ways that as adults we distract ourselves from how we're feeling. Some of those ways can be beneficial, so to speak, but at the end of the day, any repression or distraction technique is only going to work for a certain amount of time before that feeling is too much for you to feel and you get to that 10 out of 10 explosion point and our reactive behavior starts to come in, right? So the same thing, like I said, happens with our children. When we can be learning this about our children, we learn this about ourselves as well. And we start to notice our own red flags and our own like, oh, maybe I was distracting myself and I shouldn't have stayed up until midnight scrolling on social media last night. It probably would have been more beneficial to prioritize setting a boundary, turning my phone off at 10 o'clock and getting an extra 2 hours of sleep, right? Then what we are going to do is I want you to just start to notice some ways that help your child to re-regulate their nervous system. So most people are going to call this calming down. I don't necessarily like to call it calming down or look at the end goal or state of them to be calm, because even as adults, again, that state may not necessarily be what you are wanting to feel. Maybe you're just wanting to move towards feeling neutral. If you're so overwhelmed and you look at your calendar and you're like, holy shit, how am I going to get all of that stuff done today? And you are in a state of panic and anxiety. If I was to work with you on that day in that moment on helping you to feel calm, that's probably going to feel like it's out of reach for you, right? You're like, okay, how am I going to go from 10 out of 10 panic and anxiety to the absolute opposite end of the spectrum in feeling calm? It doesn't feel possible in that moment sometimes. So what we want to do is create an awareness of the spectrum of emotions that, okay, maybe tonight, once I get home and I've had a chance to have some dinner, have a shower and relax, then I'd like to start to move towards feeling calm. And that feels a bit more achievable for me. Perhaps I'd just like to move towards just feeling neutral. I just want to come down from the 10 out of 10 and I just want to be like in the middle. I'm able to handle whatever's coming my way for today. And I'm just feeling, okay, I'm all good until I get home and I can process my feelings. We want to notice what helps you to regulate your own nervous system, not necessarily calm down, but if you want to use that vocabulary, that's okay. And we want to notice what helps your child to calm down or regulate their own nervous system as well. Now, I am going to say here that different states or feelings or stress responses are going to need different types of regulation. If you think about, I know that a lot of this is like you focused and adult focused, but by you understanding this, you're going to be able to explain it to your children. So if you think about a time when you felt really angry, like you're raging, right? It might be your mum rage has kicked in. It might be the mental load is too much. It might be you're having an argument and you feel like you're not being understood. Whatever it is, think about a time when you have felt that internal rage and you're like, I don't know, you just feel like I'm about to explode. Like I've just got all of this energy inside and maybe you're clenching your fist, clenching your jaw, breathing quickly, your whole body, like your body is tense. You will probably also be able to notice this in your children, especially if you've got young children. We can have a look at, okay, so what is going on for my little boy here if he is I can see in his body that his whole, like his tension, he's holding this tension, his shoulders are up, he's clenching his jaw. I call it Ollie's Hulk stance. Like his whole body changes when he feels really angry. The cool thing about this is you used to be able to have these responses when you were younger as well. And your body used to be able to tell the outside world how you were feeling. It's just about getting back in touch with that again, right? It's getting back in touch with your own physiology and checking in when you're breathing quickly, when your jaw is tight, when you feel like you can't talk properly, when your shoulders are tense, when you are feeling these physical changes happening for you. Wow, like what is going on for me here? How am I feeling? Because my whole body has just changed. And what is happening? How am I feeling to make my body do those things and change into those things? So we can do that when we're observing our children as well. And so you may notice that when you are in a heightened state of anger, or when your child is in a heightened state of anger, to release that real big energy, which is what I call it with Ollie, it may mean that they're stomping around, they're punching the pillow, they're screaming into the pillow, they're jumping onto the play couch, they're jumping and diving into the beanbag or the trampoline. It's getting that big energy out. They might be, one of my favorite things is putting my hands together, or getting Ollie to put his hands together and pushing together really, really tight. And you can feel that energy shift. You can feel the energy shift from your shoulders down into your arms and into your hands. If you think about, if you were to able to do that or teach that as a tool to your children for when you're feeling really angry, when you notice you've got that big energy, let's shift that energy. Let's get that energy out and really push hard together. Or I'll get Ollie to push against my hands and I'll say to him, get your Hulk muscles out. Let's do it. Push against my hands. I can see you've got that big energy. And if he's really angry, he's strong, right? So thinking about, in what ways does it help my child to re-regulate their nervous system when they're feeling angry, when they're feeling overstimulated, when they're feeling upset. If your child is feeling overstimulated and they're sensitive to noise or whatever the case may be, and it's not necessarily that anger, maybe they need a quiet space. Maybe they want to lay down and read a book with you. Maybe they need a calm corner that helps them, and you've got the beanbag and the weighted blanket and the lava lamp. I'll show you a video of mine over on my Instagram and TikTok a little bit later. But you will start to learn different tools and strategies that help your child to re-regulate their nervous system in comparison to what is happening with their feeling and what you think they're feeling, or what they're able to tell you that they're feeling, and the ways that history has shown and evidence has shown that helps them to re-regulate from that state. And so just kind of having that as it's like a bit of a dictionary. You're creating a dictionary for your child in your brain of, I know that when Ollie feels this, it's likely that this, or this will help him to re-regulate. Now, what we are not going to do is try and have a conversation about it in that moment, especially if they are at a 10 out of 10, because remember, their logical brain has switched off. So you sitting there and trying to tell them and speak to them and say like, oh, I think you're feeling really angry. What's going on? Or what do you need right now? If their logical brain has switched off, they don't know. They can't articulate that to you. And if they're not giving you an answer that you're asking for, you may then be feeding into their nervous system dysregulation by feeling frustrated or asking the question again, and they're getting more heightened because they're feeling just as frustrated too. They're like, I don't know, you tell me, how can I get back down? How can I re-regulate myself, right? So we're noticing what helps our child to calm down, re-regulating their nervous system, noticing the different states, and then starting to piece all of this together and simply repeating every single day. So anytime you notice a feeling change, a state change with your child, just question like, what could be going on for them, and how could I just really simply verbalize that in 1 or 2 sentences? Hey, it looks like you're feeling sad. You're feeling sad that I put Bunny in the washing machine and that you really feel like you need a bunny cuddle right now. I get it. Is there any other toys that we could come and have a cuddle with until Bunny's washed? Because Bunny is going to be so fluffy and fresh after the washing machine and hanging out on the line in the sun, and he's going to be so excited to give you a cuddle this afternoon when he is dry. That is the perfect example of an emotionally intelligent conversation that is helping your child to understand how they feel, why they feel that way. You are validating the way that they feel. You're not making them feel bad about their feelings. All feelings are valid, whether it seems rational to you or not. And I am in the three-nager phase with my daughter. I've done the three-nager phase with my son, and I get it. Okay. I get it. Sometimes it's not rational and it doesn't feel rational to you, and it's so frustrating. But what you can do in those moments then is say, I feel like we're getting stuck, and you're stuck on this. I'm stuck on this. I am not going to argue with you about this. This is my answer. You can still have boundaries as a parent. This isn't about not having boundaries at all. It's just about conversation and communication. It looks like you're feeling this way. Could we do this instead? What do you need? If you feel like they're not at a 10 out of 10, and maybe we're like a 5 or a 6 out of 10, they may be able to let you know what they need. Ollie now, after, 2 or 3 years of doing this, will be able to come and say to me, Mom, I'm so angry. Lila just broke my Lego. And he's so cranky, but he can tell me how he feels in that one sentence. He's told me how he feels. He's got the emotional awareness and the self-awareness to explain why he's feeling angry about that. And then he might say, I want her out of my room. I need my time alone. I want to go to the calm corner and I don't want anyone with me. And it may seem like aggression or it may seem like really excessive anger, but in that way, he's recognizing also what he needs, verbalizing that, and he will then go and do that. Not every time. Again, we are all human and nobody is perfect. But the fact that he can do that and that I only learnt this myself 10 years ago when I started coaching sessions for myself is wild. I did not learn these skills until I was 28 years old. And he's 5. And just from having these regular daily conversations, it is improving and increasing his emotional awareness and emotional intelligence every single day. And you can easily do this with your children too. If I can do it, you can do it. It doesn't matter that I'm a coach. Yes, I have that awareness, but even you just listening to this episode means that you now have the tools and skills that you can start to create these conversations. You might feel a bit funny at first, but every conversation that you have is going to be creating evidence for your brain that, hey, I'm an adult, I can do this. Look at that conversation I just had with my child. That was awesome. Like, that was so cool. And you will start to notice that they start to pick up on that too, and they can start to be more conversational with you around this too. So 2 scripts. Let's start with 2 different scripts for you. So I can see that you're feeling, or I think you might be feeling, whatever. Start top level, sad, angry. Start with those 2. And then you can go deeper once you're more comfortable with that. What might you need? What could help you at the moment? Sometimes they will have an answer for that. Sometimes they won't. That's okay. If you feel like they're not going to have an answer for that, you could make a suggestion. Hey, it looks like you're feeling really cranky. I can see you've got a lot of big energy. How about you push against my hands? They might say no, that's fine, but you're offering a suggestion. You're giving their brain something else to think about apart from, oh, I'm so angry. All right, our next script is a boundaries script. And this is important because children don't have, a lot of the time, a lot of awareness around their body, especially when they're emotionally heightened. So they're going to do things like kick and punch and hit and bite. And that is normal. That is normal for them to be able to learn their body boundaries and other people's body boundaries. Okay. So we want to be able to set a boundary around that and let them know what is acceptable and what isn't in a way that is not shaming them for their emotion. So really simply, all you need to say is, I'm going to use anger as an example again, because generally that's the biggest behavior response. You're allowed to be angry. You aren't allowed to hurt other people. Or one that I used on the weekend, you're allowed to be mad. I understand that you're mad and you are allowed to be mad about this. This is something I would be mad about too, but I cannot let you ruin the house. I cannot let you put a hole in the wall, right? Like if you're going to punch the wall, it's going to get a hole in it. Okay. So there is healthier ways that we can help them to express their emotions and that energy that they need to shift in a way that is not hurting other people. It's not hurting them and it's not damaging the environment around them as well. Okay. So think about simple boundary scripts that you can put into place. You're allowed to be whatever the feeling is. You are not allowed to, whatever the thing is that they're doing that is dangerous to them, somebody else, or their environment. So honestly, that is the only 2 scripts that you need. The only other thing that you need is practice and just repeat, repeat, repeat. Because like I said, by doing this regularly, you're teaching them, you're teaching yourself. They are starting to learn more about themselves in a way that they are going to soon be able to communicate that to other people as well. And now Ollie is in a space that at school, when he's finding it really hard and he's not regulated and he needs to move his body and he can't just sit on the floor for another 5 minutes like the other kids, that he can stand up. He can let his teacher know and he can say, hey, I'm feeling really overstimulated. I need to move my body. I'm going to go and sit on my chair and use my fidget. But for him to be able to do that at 5 and in kindergarten is so cool. And that is such a win. And I don't want to sound like I'm, tooting my own horn, but also it was so validating for me in that, wow, I'm doing something right. And like, how often does that happen in parenting that you actually have that feeling? And I was like, this is such a huge win for me. I'll give you another example because this is how it could just be conversational, like on a car trip, right? We're driving to school. Ollie's feeling really frustrated. Lila's tap, 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 tapping. I could tell Ollie was feeling overstimulated. I was also quite overstimulated. It took me 4 tries to try and even get out of the house this morning because I forgot my shoes. I forgot my phone. Lila forgot a drink bottle. It was all happening. We're in and out of the car. We finally get into the car. Ollie's overstimulated and overwhelmed. Lila's crying because she can't put her seatbelt on, and then she starts tapping against the window. She's got an apple. She's tapping on the apple, and Ollie's flipped his lid. He's asked her to stop 3 times, which actually is fantastic. So that's another thing that I've tried to teach is make a request first. So tell somebody what you need first. And if that doesn't happen and they're not listening to your stop or your no or your boundary, then come and talk to me about it, you know? So that's also something that I've been trying to put in, which has kind of only been recent now that Lila can have conversations and she's old enough to have conversations, that I can now include that as a conversation topic afterwards, like I did today, that, hey, actually, I heard Ollie ask you to stop 3 times and you didn't listen to his stop. I can see that Ollie's feeling really overstimulated. And I know that you know how that feels too, Lila, because I know sometimes you want Ollie to stop doing things and he doesn't do that. And that feels really frustrating. And she was like, oh, yeah. So being able to relate it to a circumstance or a situation that they can remember themselves is so beneficial because it's not just this arbitrary, like, oh, you know, when like if you're feeling sad and then you do this and it makes you feel better. So I would also say something like, so teasing has been a big thing in our house recently. And it's more so that like just sing-songy, like, ha ha, I got a biscuit and you didn't, or like, I got a packet of rice crackers and you didn't, or whatever the thing is that they're arguing about. But that sing-songy tone is very triggering for Ollie. So he will get really upset, though he will also do it to Lila. And I understand this is just part of sibling rivalry, but the way that I teach that then is, hey, I just heard that teasing tone from you, and you told Lila yesterday that you didn't like that. So why are you now doing that to her? So that's kind of his like pause point, but I find it's still not deep enough. We need to go a little bit deeper than that. How would you feel if your friends at school were doing that to you? That wouldn't feel very good, would it? If someone walked up to you and they said to you, haha, I've got the red texter, and you wanted to use the red texter, how would you feel if somebody did that to you? If one of your friends did that to you at school, how would that feel for you? And it's just kind of, it's conversational, it's non-judgmental, it's putting them in the position that they can consider that as well as a scenario. I kind of try and touch on things that I know have happened or conversations that have happened at school. Again, these aren't big things, but it's putting them in that situation where then he's like, oh, yeah, that didn't feel good when that person said that. Okay, cool. So what are we going to do differently next time? I'm not going to tease like that. I'm not going to sing song like that. Great. Let's try that next time. And that is as far as it has to go. Sometimes having it conversational like that is so much more beneficial than creating an argument, yelling, all of those things. And again, don't get me wrong, I'm not a perfect parent. I still yell, I still lose my mind sometimes. But by including these tools, it means that they are creating that emotional intelligence and self-awareness from themselves. I know that I am like repeating myself and banging on about this, but this is the core of teaching these skills because they are going to be with them for life. That when they get a little bit older and someone is bullying them at school or really teasing them at school or they're trying to learn about consent when they're older. They need to explain to somebody how their words have made them feel. They know how they feel. They can have conversations about that because they have practiced it with you when they're younger, and they feel confident to be able to have these conversations that even as adults for us can feel really big. If you think about knowing that there's an uncomfortable conversation to be had at work or with a friend or with a family member, how does that make you feel? You might be feeling anxious, you might be feeling nervous, you get worked up about it, you have that physiological body response and body change. And think about how often we don't have those conversations or push those conversations back because we feel so uncomfortable, because we were not taught as adults in this generation to be comfortable in the uncomfortable. If we can teach our children that the spectrum of emotions is there for a reason, the spectrum of emotions is there to tell us something. It's indicating something. There is always a reason behind a feeling. There is always a reason why you are feeling a feeling. And when you can get comfortable in checking in with yourself and asking yourself, what is going on for me here? Why am I feeling this feeling? And then as an adult, okay, what could I do about that? Or as a parent, to teach our children options for what they can do about that. Imagine the upcoming generation and the conversations that they can be having, the emotional intelligence and emotional literacy that they can have, the language around their feelings and their emotions. It makes me excited, but I also want to be able to share these skills and tools because, like I said, this can literally be 2 scripts, and that's all you need, and it's just repetition. So I hope this has been helpful for some parents out there. If you have any questions, please feel free to leave a comment, come and DM over on Instagram or TikTok, and I would love to connect with you, touch base with you. If you would love to know any more about coaching for yourself and you have been feeling overwhelmed, you've been feeling stressed, you've been feeling all of the things, you feel like you've lost your sparkle, that is exactly what I work with my one-on-one clients with as well. So if you feel like you've been feeling the pull and you want to know more about coaching, my inbox is always open for you, and I will see you in our next podcast episode.